Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're strapping in for some serious regulatory horsepower. We're looking at high-value transactions online specifically, selling vehicles, cars, motorcycles, that kind of thing. Now, if you've ever tried to buy or sell a car, you probably know the actual handover can be simple. It's the paperwork, the legal stuff that gets really complex, and that complexity, that's exactly what we're digging into today. Our source is the official DealShaker Seller's Guide for Listing Vehicles. And let me tell you, this isn't your standard online listing procedure.
No, it absolutely is not. When you're dealing with items this valuable, especially ones with, a legal title, a history, the whole risk picture changes dramatically. So our mission here is really to understand the very strict standards the compliance team has put in place. We're looking at how they try to ensure quality, safety, whether you're buying, say, a used car, maybe an imported one, or even something that's been structurally modified.
Okay, you mentioned the compliance team. Before we dive into the specific documents, maybe frame their role for us, how do they fit in?
Right. Think of the compliance team as like the platform's global gatekeepers for high-risk stuff. They operate above the local teams, the national DealShaker admins. And that's necessary because, well, the risks with things like cars and property, they don't just stop at national borders, right? The platform knows these items have unique legal trails, potential for serious fraud. So the compliance team gives that central, really rigorous legal and ethical check.
That makes a lot of sense. So this strict process, where does it even kick in? What's the trigger? What pulls a car listing out of the normal flow and puts it under their microscope?
It actually starts with a pretty simple hard line, 500 EUR.
500 EUR, that's the gate.
That's the gate. Any product, and yeah, this includes vehicles, but also real estate valued over 500 EUR, needs mandatory approval from the compliance team before it can even be published.
500 EUR? That feels, I don't know, a bit low for a car, obviously, but maybe high for other things. Why that specific number?
Well, it's about casting a net wide enough to catch all potentially high-risk transfers. Even if someone tries to, say, artificially undervalue something to sneak it through, they need a definite line that just triggers the full verification. The thinking is, any item with significant financial risk or legal strings attached, it's just not worth the platform's risk to facilitate a dodgy sale without checking everything. Plus, it manages resources right. They don't want global compliance looking at every $50 phone case.
Okay, so what if someone tried to be clever? Like, list an engine part for 499 EUR, then try and sell the rest off-platform?
That would almost certainly get flagged. The whole policy is specifically built to manage those exact risky situations. Used cars with hidden problems, the legal gray areas around imported vehicles, and of course preventing stolen cars or maybe structurally modified ones from being sold without the proper, government-level paperwork. And this applies just the same to motorcycles as it does to cars. Value triggers the check.
Got it. So the 500 EUR threshold is hit. The listing needs compliance approval. Now, before they even look at the listing details, you mentioned there's a very specific security step for handling the documents.
Yes, security is absolutely key here. Before anything else, the seller has to get their house in order, basically. They need to set up or update their business account, that's step one, and upload all the required documents right there.
Okay, and this is the part I found really interesting. The way they upload them, they have to be uploaded as hidden images in the deal gallery. Hidden.
Exactly. Hidden. They exist on the platform's backend, but they are completely invisible to the public browsing the ads. And this is like a really smart piece of digital security design when you think about it. You're asking sellers for copies of vehicle registration, maybe their driver's license, even bank statements sometimes. That's super sensitive data. You absolutely cannot have that just sitting visible on a public advertisement page.
No way. You see people blurring things out in normal classifieds, but here the platform itself mandates a system. The sensitive stuff is only visible to the official compliance team.
That's precisely it. It shields the seller's personal data, which is crucial protection against identity theft, fraud, all that bad stuff. And we really need to stress this. Sellers are absolutely forbidden from publishing any ad that actually shows their registration numbers, ID numbers, bank details, whatever. If compliance sees those numbers in the public part of the listing, it's an automatic rejection. It doesn't matter if the car itself is legit. Those details are strictly for internal official verification.
Wow, so it's like demanding total transparency to the platform about the vehicle's whole life story, basically. But at the same time, shielding the seller from the public seeing that sensitive info, that's quite a balancing act.
It really is. And once that security layer is properly in place, then the compliance team starts verifying the core stuff, the proof. There are 4 essential elements they need to see. We can call them the 4 pillars of vehicle documentation.
Okay, the 4 pillars. Let's break these down. This sounds like the heart of the anti-fraud mechanism. What's pillar number 1, the very first thing they need?
Pillar 1, proof of ownership. This is fundamental. They need the vehicle registration documents. And crucially, they must be in the owner's name, the name matching the seller's account. This stops someone from just listing a car they've borrowed,
Right. But what if it's a dealership? Or maybe the seller uses a brand name that's different from the name on the title?
Good question. That's where the checks get a bit sharper. If the seller's listed name or brand isn't the same as the legal owner on the registration, then they also need to provide a copy of their personal ID or driver's license. This lets compliance connect the dots, verify the link between the person running the account, the business entity, and the actual registered owner of the vehicle.
Okay, so ownership is established. Pillar 1. What's next? I guess, where did the car come from?
Exactly. Pillar number 2 is proof of purchase or import. Just proving you own it now doesn't mean it was acquired legally, right? Especially thinking about imports or maybe stolen vehicles with fake papers. So they need things like a bank statement showing the purchase transaction, an official receipt, or, and this is key for imports, the customs release documents.
I can see that getting tricky. What about older imports? Say someone imported a classic car years ago, maybe they don't have that specific bank statement anymore.
That's always a challenge with documentation. For recently imported vehicles, the rules are really strict. Bank statements and proof of arrival, customs clearance, showing duties paid, all of it. For older ones, the focus shifts more heavily onto those official customs documents, proving it was legally brought into the country and cleared. If that paper trail is weak or missing, honestly, compliance likely won't approve it. Buyer safety trumps seller convenience here.
That definitely puts the onus on the seller to keep meticulous records, which seems fair for something this valuable. Okay, now what about that scenario we touched on earlier where the seller isn't the owner, but they have permission, like an agent selling for someone else?
Right, that takes us straight to pillar number 3, authorization documents. If the person listing the vehicle doesn't legally own it themselves, they absolutely must provide a verified power of attorney, a POA from the actual owner, or some other kind of verifiable legal proof they're authorized to sell it.
A power of attorney. Wow. How does compliance even verify that? Especially if it's maybe notarized in a different country. That seems like a huge hurdle.
It is. It requires a really high standard of documentation. They need to be sure the POA is current, legally sound, and that the person who signed it actually is the verified owner from Pillar 1. The scrutiny is vital because, dodgy agents often use fake legal papers to quickly sell off valuable assets that aren't theirs. If that authorization looks even slightly off, the listing stops dead.
That's serious stuff. Okay, so Pillar 1, ownership. Pillar 2, origin purchase. Pillar 3, authorization if needed. What's the final pillar? It must be about the seller themselves, if they're a business.
Precisely. Pillar number 4 is dealer or business verification. If the seller is clearly acting in a commercial capacity, they're a car dealer, a wholesaler, maybe an agent as their business, they need to upload another whole set of documents. Things like their official business registration papers, proof of their business bank account verification, other documents confirming they actually trade vehicles commercially, and their relationship to the specific car being listed.
So this stops like a casual private seller pretending to be a big licensed dealer, or maybe the other way around.
Exactly that. It prevents shady fly-by-night operations from popping up and trying to sell high-value items without any real accountability. Compliance needs to know they're dealing with a legitimate, registered business that has to follow consumer protection laws and can be held responsible. So those 4 pillars have to be perfectly satisfied before approval can even move forward.
That level of required transparency really feels necessary given the risks.
Okay, so let's assume the seller jumps through all those hoops. The docs are verified, hidden securely, compliance gives the green light. Now we shift to what the buyer actually sees, the public ad. The listing description itself needs specific things, right? Not just marketing spin.
Absolutely. The description isn't just for show. It's where the seller confirms the vehicle's actual condition and specs. It must include key technical details. Things like the mileage, obviously crucial for used cars, the engine power, and interestingly, the fuel consumption per kilometer.
Fuel consumption per kilometer, that's very specific. They want hard, quantifiable data.
Yes. And beyond just performance numbers, they need the physical and legal status. So the fuel type it uses, the precise tire condition, which speaks volumes about safety and upkeep, and the status of its current annual inspection or roadworthiness test. A buyer needs to know up front, if this car is actually legal and safe to drive right now.
And then thinking ahead to the actual sale, the complexities of transferring ownership, that needs to be addressed too. Yes, the listing has to clearly state what documents the buyer will need to provide or receive to legally become the new owner. The source guide points out this is vital because, as you know, the rules for registering a vehicle can vary wildly from country to country. This manages expectations. It stops a situation where someone buys the car, then finds out they can't register it locally because they weren't given the right export-import document or whatever the local DMV needs.
Okay. And from a trust standpoint, images are obviously huge for selling a car online. Any specific rules there?
Well, traders have to upload at least one verified image linked to their business account. That's the minimum. But the guide strongly recommends adding way more photos. High quality, multiple angles, inside, outside, engine bay, tires, everything. Makes sense, right? More visual proof builds trust, helps buyers feel confident, and generally leads to quicker sales.
Definitely. Okay, last piece of the puzzle. Logistics. This is a big, heavy, physical item. How on earth does delivery work for a car or motorbike bought online like this?
Right, this is another critical risk management point. The short answer is the platform generally doesn't allow and can't really facilitate the shipping of vehicles. Think about the scale, the liability, the cost.
Right.
It's enormous. So the platform is very clear. The buyer is almost entirely responsible for arranging the physical pickup or transport of the vehicle.
So the seller can't just say, sure, I'll wrap up this motorcycle and send it via freight.
No, they can't offer that as part of the deal structure facilitated by the platform. The rule is basically self-organized delivery. This shifts that huge liability, moving a valuable, potentially fragile, legally complex asset away from the seller and the platform, squarely onto the buyer. It cuts out a whole layer of complexity and potential for fraud related to long-distance transport arrangements gone wrong.
Ah, okay. That explains why the guide says only 2 delivery methods are accepted for these vehicle listings. Redeem at location, meaning the buyer comes to get it, or self-organized shipping. The platform's essentially saying, look, we'll help sort the money and the paperwork verification, but getting the actual thing from A to B, that's on you, the buyer.
Precisely. The sheer complexity of the item itself demands that clear separation of responsibilities and risks.
Wow. That whole structure then, starting from that 500 EUR tripwire, moving through the secure hidden documents layer, then the incredibly demanding 4 pillars for verification, and finally capping it off with making delivery the buyer's problem. It really shows how far a platform has to go to even attempt to safely handle selling assets like these online. It completely flips the usual burden of proof. It demands near perfect transparency from the seller before anyone in the public even gets to see the listing.
Yeah, and if you look at the bigger picture, protocols like this really signal a trend in digital commerce, I think. Platforms are being held to, or are holding themselves to, much higher standards. They're expected to act as pretty strict gatekeepers for goods that carry significant financial or legal risk. It's less about just making transactions happen fast and more about cutting down global fraud exposure by insisting on really almost institutional level vetting, even for what looks like peer-to-peer sales.
Absolutely. And it makes you think, considering the level of detail needed here, I mean, everything from tire condition specs to fuel usage figures to specific customs forms, what else is out there? What other high-value, maybe high-risk things are traded online? Perhaps things like fine art or rare metals, collectible. Should they require the same intense level of pre-approval, documentation, and seller vetting before a listing even sees the light of day? Something for you to ponder until our next deep dive. Thanks for joining us.